The best group.
And our project is
Calcium propionate.
the bread savior. Okay,
Yeah.
This is Nick.
I'm Nick.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Ion. That's Amanda. All right, Nick, you got this.
Okay. All right. So, introduction. So we know that bread is a common household commodity that everybody usually has in their pantry, and it usually is infamously growing mold, right? Nobody likes mold. It's everywhere, and it's absolutely disgusting. It grows on your bread. It grows on your food. It's a sign of spoilage. We want to get rid of that, right? So our experiment question is, how does a preservative known as calcium propionate, which is used in almost every single food, how does that affect the growth of mold and like the rate of it, and just how does it affect white bread specifically, since most people have it? So our rationale. We conducted a similar lab in our previous example, and we didn't get very much results, and that was majorly due to the limited time frame that we had. So this example, we're going to have a lot longer time frame, and therefore we'll be able to measure actual effects of this specific preservative, and we'll be able to see what kind of microorganisms that grow on it, specifically mold, of course. And we'll just be able to see what happens. And the main reason why we're doing white bread too is because, of course, everybody usually has it. It's good for sandwiches. Everybody enjoys it. So we decided to stick with a simple food like that. Well, it's too late now. They can read that. Well, our hypothesis is that if we had an increased percentage of calcium propionate in a loaf of bread, there'd be a decrease in not only the rate, but the total surface area of mold growth on a piece of bread. And now I hand it off to Ion.
Just clap for myself, yeah. Okay, before I move on to the next slide, I should probably explain what the 0%, the 0.5%, the 1%, and the 5% actually stand for. Okay, so whenever I mean 0.5% calcium propionate, what I actually mean is that it's 0.5% percent of the flour weight is put into the weight in calcium propionate. Therefore, if I have 100 grams of flour, I'm going to have 0.5 grams of calcium propionate to add to it. So that's what the 0%, 0.5, 1%, and 5% actually mean. And also, this entire graph is what we expected our graph to look like, with this one being the 0%. So it shoots up to 100% pretty fast, and then the one with the most calcium propionate takes a little bit longer. By little, I mean it almost never gets mold. Okay, next slide. This is our methods, okay? So to help assist us with making the breads as similar as possible, I use my amazing bread maker, rest in peace, to make, 4 different loaves with the exact same recipe except for the independent variable, which is calcium propionate. Okay, they're all white bread, and once we had those 4 loaves, so we cut them up into equal pieces and put them into a 5 by 5, I don't know if this is reaching, 5 by 5 Tupperware container, and add water to it as necessary, and then keep it in a environment where mold would grow best. This is me making the bread. Oh, and also we measure it bi-weekly. Okay, these are our graphs. So, as you can see, these 2 graphs up here, not 2 graphs, these 2 lines up here, this blue graph and this orange graph, they're a lot different compared to the yellow graph and the gray graph. And obviously, oh my bad, I'm being too quiet. Okay. The 2 graphs up here are the 0% and the 0.5%. So that's pretty good for us so far. Okay, and this is the total surface area of mold over time. Okay, and over here is our average rate of degradation per percentage of calcium propionate. So we have 4 data points here. You can obviously see the 0% and the 0.5% have way higher numbers than the 1% and the 5% calcium propionate, which means that for the 1% and 5% calcium propionate, they helped block mold a lot better than when it was just 0.5 or 0%. Next slide. Okay, for our t-tests, All our t-tests really are is it's comparing two data sets. So we compared all of our data sets to 0 to see if it had a statistical, or not, if it was significant in our difference. So for the 0% to 0.5%, it honestly really wasn't that different. Honestly wasn't that different. The 0.5% calcium propionate didn't have much of an effect compared to the 0%. They both, it took a week or two, but they both got 100% mold. It's disgusting. Ew. For comparing it to the 1% or the 5% though, there's a huge difference where our t-test result is very, very small, almost close to 0, which means it's very significant, which is good in our case, almost had no mold. Yeah, and obviously 0% versus 0.5% calcium propionate had not that significant a difference. Next slide.
Hey guys, for our results, we did find out that our hypothesis was true. And if you look up here, Ion received the most amount of bread mold, very fuzzy, it's green and white, and yeah, he wrapped it in a paper towel, which was damp. And Nick's here was virtually, actually no, it had some bread mold, but not a lot, as you can see. And for mine, we had both breads encountered green, powdery kind of bread dust mold. So yeah, that's our results, and we did find out that as the calcium propionate proportions increased, we found less mold degradation in our bread. And yeah, despite despite our results, we still proved our hypothesis correct. And yeah, oh, also one of our sourdough, one of our references for we used a sourdough journal paper, and it did yield similar results. So yeah, for our next design, we were going to, or some things that we could improve on is standardizing our environment more. So what we did, when we made our bread, we cut containers up into with 4 air holes. But some things that we did differently was that Ion put his under his bed, in a suitcase, so it had limited air, no sun at all, and yeah, it was under his bed, while Nick had it just under a desk. So sunlight could reach it, and also it was more susceptible to air and germs in the air. So that's one reason why we think that Ion received more bread mold than Nick. And another thing that affected it was the humidity. So in Guinan, we can control the temperature, but we can't control the humidity unless you have a humidifier or something. And Nick, obviously he lives with his mom, so he couldn't really control that. And so that's another problem. And also, Ion and I both live in Guinan, but we definitely had different results. He had a different mold than I did, so that could also be from the humidity and just standard conditions in general. Another thing that would improve our experiment is the time we took it at. Since we said we took our measurements every Tuesday and Friday at 7 p.m., but sometimes we couldn't make it because college students, so an hour or 2 hours could make a big difference. So yeah, that's something that we could fix. And also another, lastly, the way we cut the bread was varied. The 0% calcium propionate was definitely bigger than the 5% calcium propionate, and the 5% calcium propionate was denser, definitely denser than the 0%. So when we were taking our measurements, the percentage of bread mold on 0% would definitely be different than the percentage of bread mold on the 5%. So that's something that we could fix. And yeah, the way that we could fix this is just dividing the pieces of bread evenly, and yeah, creating perfectly replicated air holes, because they were kind of lopsided. Yeah. And so for our conclusion, we did encounter different results, but our hypothesis stayed true. And yeah, these are like reasons that we found like no bread mold versus like bread mold in our experiments. Yeah. And lastly, we have our references.